I think as a BYU fan, the we're gonna want AJ Dybantsa to go to an organization that has potential. The Wizards don't have potential. If it would have been the Cavs, I would have been so happy. Okay, the Cavs, the Pistons, like even the Magic, right? But when it went to
You just threw out three teams that did have a
Playoff
chance at the
teams,
number one
bro.
pick.
Three playoff teams right now.
yeah, well, I'm just saying if it came down to it, I would not want AJ Dybantsa to go to Washington D.C. and playing for the Wizards.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Hike the Y. We're super excited to be here. The boys were just talking as we got on that we've missed it. We've missed you guys, so we're looking forward to a banging episode today. May 13th. Crazy how time flies, but we're happy to be here. First thing we want to talk about, the final results of the NBA draft lottery were announced on Sunday. The Wizards have the first pick, then the Jazz and the Grizzlies. And guys, this is obviously huge because AJ Dybantsa is the projected number one overall pick. Almost not consensual, like not across the board, but basically everybody is saying that he will be on number one or number two. So Wizards or Jazz? I mean, what do you guys think about the lottery?
I think personally, it's kind of disappointing. I'm a BYU Cougar fan through and through, but when it comes to the NBA, I'm a big fan of the Utah Jazz. I really hope that we can someday win a national championship. So I really want AJ Dybantsa to go number one overall. It might be a little controversial, but I kind of want AJ Dybantsa to stay here in Utah and go to the Utah Jazz. He's mentioned multiple times that he wants to go to the number ones, like go number one overall. And that's definitely something that you can brag about saying, I won number one overall. I just don't think that the Wizards are going to be the kind of dynasty where he's going to want to end up. You know, the Wizards are definitely one of those teams where they're just kind of irrelevant. We have Anthony Davis, Trey Young, Trey Johnson, Alex Starr. We have a couple of pretty good players. Most of them went in the top 10 in their individual draft. Um, but I just think that if AJ Dybantsa goes to the Washington Wizards, that is where his career is going to slowly die. And I think he'd have a better shot at the Utah Jazz or a different organization.
Yeah, it's really funny because BYU fans, most of them are in the state of Utah. Most of them are also Jazz fans. Like for the past month, everyone's been lobbying. No, AJ Dybantsa is better than Darren Peterson. AJ Dybantsa should go number one. And now, like after the Jazz get the two spot in the NBA draft, everyone's like switching it up. Now they want flip
Peterson,
flop. They
take
want
Darren
AJ
Peterson.
Dybantsa
Yeah.
to go number two and go to the Utah Jazz, which would be awesome. And I mean, it's awesome that the Jazz got the number two pick in the first place because like they were projected, I think, for the fifth or sixth seed. That was like the range that was most likely for them to go to. So the two pick is awesome. But yeah, I'm really wishing that they would have gotten number one. But I saw like an article out of 15 NBA executives interviewed, 12 of them would take AJ Dybantsa at number one, and three of them would take Darren Peterson. So I mean that's like a 20% chance AJ Dybantsa falls to the Utah Jazz at this point. So who knows? You never know.
I think we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, the NBA Combine, the draft combine just happened too, and that could play into the decision for Wizards. But the Jazz just want the best person they available, so I doesn't really look like they would necessarily trade up for him, but it's not like if they wanted AJ as a player, they might trade up. It's not an absolutely absurd thing to say, but we'll just if the Wizards don't take AJ, then the Jazz definitely will. So he's a locked top two pick, which is incredible to have coming out of BYU.
I don't know. I actually think the Jazz have a decent chance to trade up for AJ because I mean, this is such a stacked draft where any guy 1 through 10 could be a superstar in the NBA. But I think AJ Dybantsa, and maybe Darren Peterson's up there, but the AJ Dybantsa, and I've said this over and over, AJ Dybantsa's floor is just so high, in my opinion, that it's impossible for a team like the Jazz, to not at least give it a go, not at least talk to the Wizards because the Jazz are knocking on the doorstep, guys. The Jazz are right there. If they can get Walker Kessler back, if he doesn't go somewhere else in free agency and like they have Jaren Jackson Jr. now, Lowry Markkanen, Keontae George, all these young stars coming together, the Jazz could be the next Thunder. I really feel like the Jazz could be a dynasty at this point.
Yeah, that's a really good take. And I think that's why it's so important that the Jazz get AJ Dybantsa and not Darren Peterson. I think as BYU and Utah Jazz fans, we should be pushing to have Darren Peterson go number one overall and try to get AJ Dybantsa. And if the Jazz are somehow to get the number one draft, um, get AJ Dybantsa number one overall. But I think it's going to be very difficult for the Jazz to get this number one spot just because it's going to put them into a tricky situation. Are they going to have to get rid of a star player and a bunch of future first round picks? Or is it possible that they can talk to the Wizards and see if they're willing to take someone like Darren Peterson or Cam Boozer overall? Some reports that I saw today on ESPN is that Cameron Boozer is not someone that should be slept on. Um, Going into the combine, people weren't really confident in what his abilities are going to be, but just looking at some of the quick stats, he went 19 for 25 on average for spot up threes in the combine. And also Cam Boozer also has relations to um the Utah Jazz office where I believe it's his dad
Yeah.
works for the Utah Jazz in looking at NBA prospects. So I could see the Jazz maybe saying, I think AJ Dybantsa is a phenomenal player. He might go to the Wizards, but we're going to take Cam Boozer at number two. There's just so many ways to speculate for this upcoming NBA draft that it's really hard to say what the Wizards are going to choose. The Wizards said that they're open to selling the number one spot to anybody in the league. So we could see another team swoop in. I think as a BYU fan, we're gonna want AJ Dybantsa to go to an organization that has potential. The Wizards don't have potential. If it would have been the Cavs, I would have been so happy. Okay, the Cavs, the Pistons, like even the Magic, right? But when it went to
You just threw out three teams that did have a
Playoff
chance at the
teams,
number one
bro.
pick.
3 playoff teams right now.
yeah, well, I'm just saying if it came down to it, I would not want AJ Dybantsa to go to Washington, D.C. and playing for the Wizards. It's just I don't know. I feel like that's a good spot for Darren Peterson to end up.
It's like the
Not,
Jets of the NFL. It's just where careers go to die. We do not,
yeah.
and maybe AJ Dybantsa turns that around because I mean, if Anthony Davis can stay healthy, you've got Trey Young there, you've got
Mhm.
a decent bit of young talent in Washington. Maybe they finally turn it around. But I agree, AJ Dybantsa, he could he could turn into a complete superstar if he goes to the right spot.
Yeah. If I could bring up another point, some other draft picks like Kevin Durant, a player that AJ Dybantsa looks up to and also is usually compared to, he went number two behind Greg Oden. Now, if you guys don't know who Greg Oden is, I don't really know who Greg Oden is. I'll be 100% honest to you, but I do know Kevin Durant. So I think AJ Dybantsa right now is stuck in this mindset that he needs to go number one overall. I think a quick talk to Kevin Durant will help him change his mind and try to go number two overall. Some people have actually been speculating that AJ Dybantsa has been throwing in the combine so he doesn't go to the Wizards. Of course, that's probably just jokes. But I think of LeBron James when he was drafted. People thought that Mil Milicic was going to go over LeBron James, right? And that's just crazy to think about. LeBron James did end up going number one overall, but people still had Darko Milicic going over him. It's like if Darren Peterson goes, if AJ Dybantsa or Cam Boozer goes number one overall, I think we're gonna find out in the next 15 years if this number one or number two or number three spot were actually busts or actually contenders or be like phenomenal players. So AJ could go number two and still be an amazing player 15 years down the road.
Yeah, for sure. And another point that is interesting to think about is like AJ Dybantsa, there's a chance, I don't think he'll do this, but what if he just says, "Hey, Washington Wizards, if you guys draft me, I'm just not gonna I'm just not gonna play for you. I'll go
Oh,
back to
the Eli
college.
Manning.
I'll pull an Eli Manning. And actually I don't know if he'd be able to go back to college at that point, but he could just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna sit out a year. Like I'm young, I can work on my game by myself, and if you draft me, that's what you're gonna get. So and I don't think he'll do this, but he could make a play to go to the Utah Jazz still, which would be really cool.
I honestly, the thing about the Wizards is, and the thing about who he'd be with, is the fact that you can't rely on them being healthy, which would shine a bigger spotlight on him. Like maybe he goes to the Wizards and he has to play through his rookie contract, and the goal is to get them to the playoffs, and they do have potential to do that. Like the Wizards and the Jazz, in my book, have just the same amount of potential to be a playoff team in a couple of years. Um, but if he does that, he does his rookie contract. If it's really not a good fit, he doesn't have to come back. He can go sign somewhere else. You have the people. Um, it's happened. Like some high draft picks don't really do so well their first contract, but then eventually get settled into a new place that really feels like home, and they really have a flourishing career. So that could be something that happens to AJ. But I mean, I just honestly would love to see him go number one. I know what it's worth. We've never had a number one pick coming out of BYU. Going more on the college side than on the Jazz side of things, I think he would be. It's just better for the school to have had a number one pick, and that's one thing that Utah has over us that we don't right now. We don't have a number one pick in the NBA draft, and Utah does. And so I want that for a little bit of BYU pride.
Yeah, it's definitely conflicting being a BYU fan and also being a Utah Jazz fan because I bet the best scenario is that AJ Dybantsa goes number one overall and is able to go to an amazing team. But unfortunately, we're put in this tricky situation where he's going to the Washington Wizards, which is not really good, and we want what's best for him. We want him to have a good career, but it would also be amazing to see him go number one overall, being able to say that we had a number one. Um, Draft pick, which Utah cannot say. Just to throw a little shade their way. Um,
Utah can say that actually.
oh,
Andrew
really?
Bogut was drafted number one overall in 2005. That's what I was
No.
saying. Utah can say that. We cannot right now, which for the pride, it would be good for us to have a number one overall pick
Oh
to
my
match
goodness,
that.
my ball knowledge is being exposed twice, back-to-back episodes. I did not know that Utah had that. Well, I've never heard of him, so obviously not that famous.
Won
Yeah,
three titles with
busted.
the Warriors, so uh,
Dang, and good on you, Connor, for knowing that bit of ball
I got you.
knowledge.
I got you.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the dream scenario, I think, would be for the Jazz to trade up to the number one pick, get AJ Dybantsa, and then we look back 10 years later and like, oh, they didn't give anyone away. Like everything they gave away was terrible. Uh, but it's just going to be so hard because AJ Dybantsa is also showing out at the NBA Draft Combine, not necessarily with what he's done so far as of like his 3-point shooting, which has been okay from what I've seen, but his one thing that stood out to me was his 42-inch vertical, which I did not realize he had those kind of hops just because
He
he's
has
kind of
hops,
tall.
bro.
Like I
He's
was
a
like, holy
bunny
cow,
hops.
42 inches. And like just a bit of perspective, the NBA average is around, I think, 30 inches for verticals. So that's 10 inches he's got plus 6'8". He's already tall. And I just don't know. His combine, if he continues to do well, it's going to be hard for anyone to jump him for the number one pick.
Brendan, just going off of what you said, it's pretty interesting. We look back at Cooper Flag to see how much he had on his vertical, and he had 35.5 inches compared to the 42 inches to AJ Dybantsa, and and their
I
height
would have told you.
difference.
I would have told you Cooper Flag could jump more too.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, their height difference is only 1 inch. So just looking at Cooper Flag, who is an amazing rookie, um, and going to looking at AJ Dybantsa, it's just insane to see that he's got a 42-inch vertical over the 35.5-inch vertical for Cooper Flag.
Fun little question here. I just thought of it. If Cooper Flag was in this draft, who do you think goes number one? Because Cooper Flag had a stellar season last year. He was the consensus number one pick for sure. But is AJ Dybantsa better? I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's hard
Oof.
because of where Cooper Flag played. Him being at Duke with Cameron Boozer, if he would have played this year, it would have been a lot tougher of a situation for him to do what he did and carry the team the way that he did in 2024. Um, where AJ didn't have to split with anybody really last year. It wouldn't have been, or AJ this year wouldn't have had to really do anything different. But Cam Boozer and Cooper Flag may have either boosted or lowered each other's draft stock if they would have played on the same team. And they might have both gone top 5, but maybe not one, either one. So interesting
Yeah, and
question.
they would have had Con Knipple too, which would have had three potential top five draft picks. That'd be insane.
I think if Cooper Flag would have been with Cam Boozer, I could see them both going number one and then number two, right? Going back to back and then pushing AJ Dybantsa and Darren Peterson to a 3 and a 4 slot just because they went to Duke, just because I think they might have also won a national championship and just because they're both just phenomenal players. I this is controversial. I think Cameron Boozer could go number one or number two. Um, Either in front of or behind AJ Dybantsa. I think the real top three should not include Darren Peterson, um, unless Darren Peterson is in that third slot. I think if we wanted to play a quick game, I brought a little game today, and basically what it is if you were the GM or if you were a head coach at, let's say, the Utah Jazz or the Wizards, who are you going to take out of the top 10 players? I'll just give you a quick reminder of who these top 10 players are. So, according to ESPN, the top 10 prospects right now are AJ Dybantsa, Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer, Caleb Wilson, Keaton Wagler from Illinois, Darius Acuff Jr. from Arkansas, Kingston Flemings, and Nate Emmett from Tennessee. So, if you had to choose one player, because like what why this is so important is AJ Dybantsa, Caleb Wilson, Cameron Boozer, Darren Peterson, they're not going to be the missing puzzle piece for the Utah Jazz. They're not going to be the missing puzzle piece for the Washington Wizards, right? Who are you going to take? Who's got the most potential? And who do you think can then eventually become the face of your organization and help you guys set up for a title? Who would you take?
It's a great question. And I mean, I feel like if you're talking about I feel like there's clearly a top four, and that's AJ Dybantsa, Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer, Caleb Wilson. And I really feel like unless I feel like that's pretty cemented in my opinion. So I kind of want to shout out someone from outside the top four. And I actually want to shout out two guys. One of them being Darius Acuff Jr. from Arkansas. He's just wow. Like if you guys have been watching the NBA at all, NBA playoffs, Terrence Shannon Jr. from Illinois a couple years back wasn't looked at as a huge prospect, but he's come off the bench for the Timberwolves in the NBA playoffs, and he's provided a lot of spark. He's just so quick; he can get right past the defender. And Darius Acuff Jr. kind of reminds me of that, except for pretty much better at all other levels. And then Kingston Flemings from Houston, he's just I feel like he's got the it factor. Like he's that guy. And I really like how he's able to get to his spot. And he's just a tough guy. And I really like Kingston Flemings Jr. as well. So those two guys in the top 10. But besides that, the top four, I feel like is kind of cemented.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. If I'm Jazz picking at 2, right? GM of the Jazz. We're catering a lot to Jazz fans today. I like it. I think I'd have to work them out more than what I see on the combine. I want to see their work ethic because right now I know that I can trust AJ Dybantsa, But if Darren Peterson really was just cramping because of whatever he said, creatine or whatever, and he really can play 82 games a season, 30-ish minutes a game, and be a starter for the Jazz, I would take Darren Peterson number two if he can show that he has that work ethic. Because I definitely do a lot more investigating before I would just shut him down. I would want him at two. He's the second best player or the first best player, depending on what ranking you look at in anybody's draft board. So I think he could be a franchise changer for the Jazz. In the way that AJ could, if he can show that he can play, because AJ playing 40 minutes a game really kind of helped boost his draft stock. But Darren Peterson still has that factor to be able to change a franchise if he can play, if he plays. So that's the question. If I'm the Jazz, is he going to play? Because if he's not, then I'll go to Cameron Boozer and I'll bring him to Salt Lake. But uh, any of those top three or top four in my mind can change a franchise. And I think they all have the potential to actually do it, no matter where they get drafted, in what order.
Yeah. And like you look at a guy like Anthony Davis, who this is an elite NBA level guy, but he's just never on the court. And it feels like he's always getting injured. And that's just what I'd be worried about with Darren Peterson playing for the Utah Jazz.
Um, if I could just say, I think Darren Peterson um was not a question mark. Is he going to be a phenomenal player? Is he actually going to be able to play? Is he going to be healthy? I think he does have the potential to go number one, and the Wizards pick him up. I think the more realistic thing is that the Jazz have to make a choice on Darren Peterson or Cameron Boozer because AJ Dybantsa goes number one overall to the Wizards, right? I would take AJ Dybantsa just because we saw him carry this BYU team when Richie Saunders got hurt and was out for the remainder of the season. AJ Dybantsa was averaging 29 points a game. He was I don't know how many minutes he was averaging in a game, but he had a couple of games where he was playing 40 minutes in a game. He was playing without sitting on the bench at all, right? This AJ Dybantsa player has such an amazing work ethic, and he's just such a wholesome guy. I think you'd be crazy to not take him number one overall. But if you are the Wizards GM and you listen to this podcast, you should take Darren Peterson number one overall. He's a phenomenal player. And AJ Dybantsa is trash, and you should just leave him for the Utah Jazz because the Utah Jazz need some trash like AJ Dybantsa. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's all I got to say. Or actually, one more thing. Sorry, Darren Peterson. He shoots 30% from three, and AJ Dybantsa is also in that same range. But AJ Dybantsa, every stat flies off the sheet over Darren Peterson. The only stat that Darren Peterson has over AJ Dybantsa is the fact that he has sat more games and more time in this last college basketball season, and he scored more when they went head to head. That's the only stat line that Darren Peterson has over AJ Dybantsa. We look at his max vertical, 37 inches. AJ Dybantsa, 42. Like, AJ Dybantsa is clearly this number one pick. And if I was the Utah Jazz trying to get a number two pick overall, I would say take Cameron Boozer over Darren Peterson. So that's my take.
I- I'm sorry, Nate. I just got to correct you one more time.
No.
Darren Peterson shoots 38% from three, so that is better than AJ
Oh, sorry.
Dybantsa,
Sorry,
unfortunately.
30% in the last 10 games.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
30% in the
last
last 10
10.
games. Yeah. Because
There you
the
go.
last 10 games, those were the only games that Darren Peterson was able to play to his highest potential, where he was technically quote unquote healthy, and not suffering from that creatine injury. But
Yeah.
Brandon, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're just looking
And
out for you today.
yeah. And I mean, we got to wrap it up soon, but I do want to talk about one more thing, which is someone on the BYU basketball squad did something drastic this past week,
Show the
and it
picture.
was
Show
not
the picture.
okay.
Show the
This
picture.
is, I'll pull it up. This is going to be weird to show on the
Pull it up and
podcast.
edit.
Yeah, we'll show it. We'll show it in edit too. Robert Wright the third. What happened? What happened to you, man? I saw the picture. Robert Wright the third. If you're listening to this podcast instead of watching it on the screen, Robert Wright the third cut his hair, and
Basically,
you can barely even tell it's him. Like
he's bald.
if I would have seen the picture like scrolling through something, I wouldn't have known. Like I only
It's a
saw it
new
because it's
recruit.
posted like
It's a guy
Robert.
coming on a visit. It's a high schooler coming on a
Ooh.
recruiting trip to Provo.
It's crazy, but yeah, I think that just shows he's locked in for the upcoming season, and he's going to be performing. He's going to have that extra speed because the hair isn't going to be weighing him down.
Sure, he's going to be aerodynamic.
Yes.
And Rob Wright, he kind of looks like AJ Dybantsa. Like when you go look at AJ Dybantsa when he's getting his pictures for BYU before he was technically committed here. AJ Dybantsa had a really short haircut with some earrings, and it was pretty funny. So I've been seeing some side by sides with Rob Wright the third and AJ Dybantsa. Just looking side by side. It's pretty funny. You have to look it up.
Maybe it's the hair. Maybe that's the deciding factor on greatness. Who knows?
First round draft pick, Rob Wright.
Yes, sir.
I think
He had
next
to cut
time.
the hair so the cap fits, so the draft cap fits.
Ooh, ooh.
Ooh. Oh, you should add this part into the podcast. We
Okay.
forgot to mention the lacrosse team got
National championship. Oh my
a
gosh.
championship.
I didn't even
Yeah,
think
They
about
won.
it. Natties
That's it.
all over the board.
Was that the BYU men's or the BYU women's?
BYU
BYU
men's.
lacrosse.
That's crazy because I was gonna go to one of their lacrosse games and do like a video storytelling project about it, and I ended up not going. But then I looked up the score afterwards. They got beat by Utah Valley, but I guess it
Utah
doesn't
Valley's got a
matter.
good team.
Yeah, ended up winning the title. I like
I
that.
think next time we definitely need to talk about kind of the rest of the players, about Richie Saunders, who I think could potentially go to the Clippers or the Nets, depending on where everything falls. I'm pretty excited to see where Richie Saunders goes. We're gonna have
Yeah.
to talk about that next time. And also Keba Keita having a double in the draft combine, just having an absolute phenomenal
Yeah.
game one. We're gonna have to talk about that
Go.
next time.
And the March Madness expansion, I don't think we've talked about that yet too.
We
We're
haven't.
just priming everybody up to tune in next time.
Get
Huh?
ready for the next episode. It's gonna be a banger.
There you go. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We hope you guys have a great week. Keep following BYU sports stuff, all the updates. There's a ton of stuff happening, even though there's not a lot of games. Anyway, we'll see you guys later. Go Dogs! Sick 'em! It sounds so bad when we're on doing Zoom.
Yeah, I was about to say I was editing the podcast and I was like, you can't hear the barks at all.
Darn.
Yeah, maybe we
Maybe
should
you
have done
do
a
it
louder
louder.
thing. It's okay.
Dang it.